Welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into a surprising and intriguing story about Sylvester Stallone, as he reveals the names of those he dislikes in the entertainment industry. Have you ever been curious about the tough relationships of Hollywood stars? Let's find out who made it onto Stallone's most hated list and why. Are these conflicts simply misunderstandings? Or is there something deeper behind the tension? And how have these relationships affected their careers and public images? You definitely won't want to miss the intriguing stories behind these mind games. The tense relationships between Hollywood stars really are fascinating, aren't they? Have you ever imagined that these conflicts could completely change their careers? If you've ever wondered about the struggles in the entertainment industry, leave a 1. If you think these relationships have a huge impact on their public image, or 0. If you think they're just minor misunderstandings. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to leave us a sub for your support. Back in 1974, Hollywood was full of young actors eager to find their big break. 2 of them were Sylvester Stallone and Richard Gere. At the time, neither was famous, just a pair trying to get more screen time in a low-budget film called The Lords of Flatbush. But during the filming process, an incident occurred that sparked a rivalry between them that lasted for a decade, all over a sandwich. The film was based on the lives of young people in Brooklyn in the 1950s. Stallone was the co-writer of the script, drawing inspiration from his own experiences growing up in Hell's Kitchen. For him, the film was not just a career opportunity, but something deeply personal. Stallone played Stanley Rosiello, a tough guy with a hidden soft side. After years of struggling in the industry, this was his chance to prove that he could lead a film. In contrast, Gere came from a completely different background. He had received professional training in theater, focusing on every detail of his performance from his lines to his gestures. He portrayed Chico Tyrell, one of the key characters in the gang. Although the role wasn't particularly complex, their acting styles couldn't have been more different. The two immediately clashed. Stallone acted on instinct, raw and emotional, while Gere preferred to meticulously analyze everything. Their styles might have worked in different settings, but this film wasn't a product of a major studio. With a limited budget, a tight schedule, and the entire set feeling like a pressure cooker, everyone was on edge, hoping this small film would catch some attention. And then a simple scene set everything off. The 4 of them were crammed into the car running lines and preparing for the shot. Lunch had just ended, nothing fancy, just simple homemade sandwiches. And that's when things took a turn for the worse. Gere, sitting next to Stallone in the car, was eating one of those sandwiches loaded with mustard. At one point, a glob of mustard slipped out and fell right onto Stallone's pants. Not a big deal, right? Well, not if the tension hadn't reached its boiling point. Without saying a word, Stallone immediately yelled out, jabbed his elbow hard into Gere's head, grabbed him, and shoved him out of the car. He just threw him onto the sidewalk as if nothing had happened. Everything came to a halt. The entire set fell silent. No one knew what to do. Was this part of the scene? Was this a real fight? Either way, one thing was clear. These two couldn't work together. The director and producers had to make a decision. Keeping both actors could lead to daily chaos, but firing one would mean reshoots, lost money, and more delays. In the end, they sided with Stallone. Gere was out. His role was recast. His scenes were reshot, and the official reason was creative differences. But everyone on set knew better. Stallone had made it clear this was his film, and anyone who didn't respect him would be out. For Gere, this was a humiliating way to be fired. It wasn't because he couldn't act or wasn't right for the role. It was because of the mustard stain and Stallone's volatile temper. In an industry as small and rumor-filled as Hollywood, this incident quickly spread. Gere would never forget that moment. Meanwhile, Stallone emerged from the situation looking like a man of power, someone who would never tolerate disrespect when it came to protecting his projects. But it came with a price. He had proven he could be hot-headed, even petty, and not everyone wanted to deal with that. Still, the message was clear: he wasn't just another actor. He was the boss. Years later, both men had become major stars. Of course, Stallone achieved immense success with Rocky, while Gere went on to star in American Gigolo and An Officer and a Gentleman. But that mustard moment never really faded. It marked the beginning of a simmering rivalry that would continue behind the scenes for years. And it's hard to believe when you think about it, the two future Hollywood icons arguing over a mustard stain on a pair of pants in a cramped car. But sometimes just a small spark is enough to ignite a flame that lasts for decades. Some Hollywood feuds start from wounded egos or personal tragedies. But what happens when everything boils down to money? Sylvester Stallone and Bruce Willis were once very close. They were part of a small group of action stars who dominated the 80s and 90s. Stallone had Rocky and Rambo, while Willis had Die Hard. Together, they defined what it meant to be a tough guy on screen for an entire generation. However, by 2010, everything had changed. Both were aging, and the roles they once easily landed were becoming harder to come by. The action genre had shifted, and muscle-bound heroes no longer blew things up like they used to. That's when Stallone came up with the idea for the Expendables, a nostalgic film featuring the action stars of the old school. This wasn't just another performance. For Stallone, it was personal. The film was his way of honoring the golden age of action films and giving those legends one last chance to shine. The first Expendables was a huge success, grossing over $270 million, and audiences were immediately excited to see the old action stars reunite. The second film did even better, feeling like a new chapter in their careers, as they found a way to keep the spark alive without pretending they were still young. Willis had been on board from the start. He played Church, a CIA operative, a small role, but one that added weight to the team. Behind the scenes, it seemed like Willis understood exactly what Stallone was aiming for: camaraderie, loyalty, and the return to their glory days. However, when it came time to make the Expendables 3, things started to go awry. Stallone wanted to make the film bigger, tighter, and better. He wanted to bring in even more legends like Harrison Ford, and possibly even some surprise cameos. But things were not as smooth as they seemed. Everything had been set up, and then came the negotiations with Willis, and that's where everything started to fall apart. Willis's team presented a number that shocked everyone: $4 million for 4 days of work. $1 million per day. No negotiation, no room for maneuver. It was simply, pay up or we're out. Hollywood right. Ridiculous paychecks are nothing new, but this one was different. These films had been successful so far because everyone had been willing to take a little less. The issue wasn't about the money, it was about the feeling. The real issue wasn't just money. The issue was about being part of something great with the old crew. Willis's demand made it feel like he didn't care about any of that. Stallone didn't see it as just a number. To him, it was a slap in the face. He had built the entire film around the idea of brotherhood, and now one of the original stars had turned it into a business deal. They tried to negotiate, hoping Willis would come around, but he wouldn't budge. So Stallone had to make a choice: give in or stand his ground. He chose to stand firm. Willis was out. They rewrote the script, cut out his character, and brought in Harrison Ford to replace him. Ford came in with excitement, professionalism, and a willingness to dive in basically everything Stallone felt Willis lacked. But Stallone didn't stop there. He publicly criticized Willis, making it clear that the choice was not just about the money, but about the attitude and respect for the team. He bluntly called Willis greedy and lazy in interviews, which was outrageous in Hollywood. Normally, people keep such things behind closed doors, but Stallone didn't. He made it clear that he wasn't afraid to burn that bridge. The consequences were severe. Suddenly, Willis was labeled as difficult to work with, all because of money distanced from the charm that a regular person had brought to the legendary character of John McClane. People in the industry began whispering. Fans noticed his absence in the Expendables 3, and rumors started to spread. Meanwhile, Stallone held firm to his stance. He made it clear that the Expendables wasn't just about a paycheck. It was a passion project, and anyone who couldn't respect that had no place in it. The Expendables 3 still made a decent amount of money, over $200 million, but the atmosphere had definitely changed. The shift was clear. The whole brotherhood vibe had been shattered, and while the franchise continued to grow, something felt off, as if its heart had faded. At the end of the day, this wasn't just a contract dispute. It was a friendship, or at least a working relationship, that had fallen apart right in front of the public eye. All because of 4 days and a bit of greed with mustard. But if Stallone thought Bruce Willis was greedy, just wait until he hears about the betrayal that would completely break his heart. Back in the late 80s, Sylvester Stallone and Eddie Murphy were at the peak of their careers. Every time you walked into a movie theater, it was impossible not to see one of their names on a poster. Stallone was the king of action with films like Rocky and Rambo, while Eddie Murphy had audiences laughing out loud with hits like Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America. Beyond their fame, the relationship between these two wasn't just another typical Hollywood connection. They shared a rare and genuine friendship. It wasn't just about being friendly on the red carpet. They partied together, joked around like close friends at industry events, and truly had each other's backs. They supported each other's careers without any hint of fakery. It was a special bond between two guys who came from humble beginnings and never forgot the struggles they faced on their way to success. It all started to get a little rocky during the making of Beverly Hills Cop 2. At the time, Sylvester Stallone's wife, Brigitte Nielsen, had a role in the film. With her striking height, platinum blonde hair, and natural charm, she definitely stood out. And of course, she was married to one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. You'd think that meant she'd be off limits when it came to getting close to other men, but Hollywood plays by its own rules. With long work days and plenty of downtime between scenes, people on set often grew close quickly. Before long, whispers started making their way around. People on the set began to notice a certain chemistry between Brigitte and Eddie. There was an undeniable closeness developing between the two. Whether it was true or not, Hollywood is infamous for how fast rumors spread. And suddenly, things started to feel off. Every time Eddie cracked a joke that made Brigitte laugh a little too hard, people began exchanging suspicious glances. Anytime they talked for too long at a party or were seen together on set, suddenly it was all evidence of something going on behind the scenes. The whispers quickly turned into tabloid headlines. Little comments became big rumors. In Hollywood, it doesn't always matter what the truth is. What matters is how it looks. And for Stallone, it looked bad. Imagine it even if absolutely nothing happened. Just hearing your wife's name constantly brought up in stories like that with your best friend, that would make anyone feel uneasy. It didn't just make Stallone feel embarrassed, it made him feel hurt and humiliated. Every time he read a tabloid headline or overheard a passing joke, those emotions would come rushing back, eating away at him. And it became unbearable. Stallone isn't the kind of guy to just brush things off. He's not quick to forgive. Whether Eddie meant to or not, his actions sparked a feeling in Stallone that couldn't be ignored, and for him that marked the beginning of the end of their friendship. If you believe that rivalry and life's pressures can slowly erode even the strongest relationships, drop a 1 in the comments. But if you think empathy and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, comment 0. Don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe so you won't miss more amazing stories just like this. Sylvester Stallone decided to take action in a way that no one in Hollywood typically does. He bypassed all the filters, no PR teams, no spokesperson to smooth things over, and no lawyers sending letters behind the scenes. He picked up the phone and called Eddie Murphy directly. But don't think this was a polite call. This wasn't a simple, "Hey buddy, how's it going?" type of call. This was a personal call filled with anger and hurt. Stallone needed answers, and he wanted them directly from Eddie's mouth. His voice might have been a little hoarse, maybe even a bit higher, because he needed an explanation right away. "What's going on between you and Sasha?" That was it. No beating around the bush, no sugarcoating. A years-long friendship suddenly became fragile over just one question. No matter what Eddie said, once trust was shaken, especially in a marriage already facing issues, words couldn't always heal the wound. Whether something really happened or not, Stallone couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And now these proud, powerful friends found themselves on opposite sides in a very chaotic situation. Stallone felt hurt and betrayed, while Eddie was shocked that his friend believed the rumors. What was once a strong friendship now began to crack. Things only got worse when the press got involved. Hollywood has always thrived on drama, and a feud between two big stars was like a gift. Reporters began digging, and gossip magazines hinted at tension and consequences. The incident quickly became a public story. From that point on, the calls stopped, and they no longer appeared at the same parties. Whenever they crossed paths at events, they stood at opposite ends of the room, and instead of warmth, there was only cold silence. Eddie later admitted how sad it was that everything escalated so quickly, with friendship and fond memories lost to rumors and broken trust. The industry's comparisons with questions like, "Who has the higher box office numbers?" and "Who made a more successful comeback?" only heightened the tension. The media even made them rivals just to keep the story alive. But the truth was, no matter how much time passed, their relationship could never return to what it once was. Both continued their careers, but a part of their journey, the genuine bond they once shared, was gone. This is truly a human story where fame, wealth, and success can't shield you from the pain of a friendship falling apart. What matters isn't what happened or didn't happen on set. The issue is trust. Once trust is broken, especially in a world like Hollywood filled with images and reputations, healing becomes almost impossible. What began as one of Hollywood's greatest friendships turned into something entirely different. Eddie's betrayal struck a heavy blow to Stallone, but no one could prepare him for when his own ego nearly ruined his most legendary role. What do you do when a Hollywood legend shows up and tries to rewrite your entire movie? Back in 1982, Sylvester Stallone was at the peak of his career. Rocky had transformed him from a guy cleaning lion cages at the zoo into a household name. The story of the underdog overcoming adversity had touched the hearts of audiences, and suddenly Stallone wasn't just an action star, but a symbol. But he didn't stop there. He wanted to tackle another character, one darker and more intense, John Rambo. First Blood wasn't just another action movie, while it had its share of thrilling explosions and dangerous stunts. First Blood was deeply emotional. Rambo wasn't a superhero. He was a broken man, a Vietnam War veteran who felt completely alienated from society. The film tackled real-world issues like PTSD isolation and the way society treats soldiers after war. Stallone wasn't just acting, he wanted to convey a powerful message. After fighting tooth and nail to maintain control over Rocky, Stallone wasn't about to let anyone diminish the value of first blood. Then, Kirk Douglas, a Hollywood legend, stepped in. We're talking about a major-name Spartacus Paths of Glory and over 5 decades of iconic roles. When Douglas expressed interest in playing Colonel Sam Trotman, Rambo's former commander, and the only one who truly understood him, it felt like a huge win for Stallone. A Hollywood legend alongside him in the lead, it was truly a perfect pairing. However, things quickly took an unexpected turn. Right from the start, Douglas made it clear he wasn't just there to read lines. He had read the book that First Blood was based on and decided the film needed a different ending. In the book, Rambo dies, shot by Trotman. Douglas wanted the movie to end this way not as a suggestion or discussion, but as a demand. He believed Rambo's death would add more weight and drama to the film. In fact, it would be a deeply emotional moment to say goodbye to the character. However, director Ted Kotcheff suddenly found himself in a tricky situation, caught between Stallone and Douglas, two people with completely different visions for the film. Stallone had worked tirelessly on First Blood for months. He wasn't just the actor, he was also deeply involved in shaping the film. Stallone saw First Blood as the beginning of a larger film franchise. On the other hand, Douglas was solely focused on the ending that would allow him to shine in the moment with no concern for future sequels. This led to his impatience. Douglas even started referring to himself in the third person during meetings. Kirk Douglas wouldn't say this line, or Kirk needs a stronger motivation here. He brought his own rewritten version of the script to the set, attempting to reshape the film to fit his vision of the character. The situation became awkward, and it quickly brought everything to a halt. While Stallone and Kotcheff were trying to fine-tune the film, they also had to contend with Kirk Douglas's ego. Long nights of script rewrites, continuous back-and-forth discussions, and an atmosphere of tension took over the entire cast and crew. Everyone could feel the tension in every situation. It wasn't just two creative minds at odds, it was a full-on clash between two worlds, old Hollywood versus new Hollywood. And in this battle, neither side was willing to compromise. Stallone was particularly frustrated. He had fought tirelessly to maintain control over the film, only to watch someone else try to rewrite the story at the last minute. But Douglas didn't stop. He kept pushing for the original ending where Trotman kills Rambo time and time again. Eventually, director Ted Kotcheff couldn't take it anymore. He demanded Douglas sit down and delivered a simple yet decisive line: "This is the movie we're making." This is the script you agreed to. If you don't want to do it, you can leave. No shouting, no theatrics, just the truth. And that's exactly what happened. Kirk Douglas walked away. Losing a major actor after just a few days of filming could have destroyed any movie. But in this case, it turned out to be a strange blessing. They called Richard Crenna to replace Douglas, and he came in with no preparation. He had only 24 hours to get ready, but he memorized his lines on the way to the set. And then he delivered. Without trying to steal the spotlight, without altering the dialogue, Crenna brought a quiet strength to the role, making the audience truly believe he cared about Rambo. He brought warmth to the role, balancing out the intensity of Stallone. The shift from Kirk Douglas to Richard Crenna changed the entire dynamic of the film. Instead of the cold, dramatic ending that Douglas wanted, the film became something different, something more hopeful. And that opened the door for sequels, which would become a major issue later on. For Stallone, the entire mess with Kirk Douglas became an important lesson in his career. He witnessed firsthand that protecting his vision sometimes meant making tough decisions, even when facing off with a legend like Kirk Douglas. But he stuck to his instincts, and it paid off. First Blood became a massive hit, proving that Stallone wasn't just an action star with Rocky. It launched a franchise giving popular culture one of its most iconic characters, and showing that risky decisions can sometimes lead to huge success. And perhaps most importantly, the film demonstrated that even when Hollywood royalty leaves the set, the movie can still go on, and sometimes it can even be better. If Kirk Douglas was the tough guy of Hollywood, Stallone's next rival was much closer to home. But did the fierce competition between them truly help sustain both of their careers? Back in 1977, Sylvester Stallone walked into the Golden Globes thinking that tonight would be his night. Just a few months earlier, he could barely afford a meal and had even considered robbing a store to survive. It was that bad. But then Rocky changed everything. Stallone went from a guy cleaning lion cages to a major star nominated for Best Actor and Best Screenplay. That night was the pinnacle of his incredible comeback. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger walked in. Arnold entered like a human wall with bulging muscles, overflowing confidence, and an Austrian accent that made everything he said sound like a punchline. He walked straight up to Stallone and introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger, the new talent of the year." Stallone looked at Arnold with a somewhat hostile glance, thinking to himself, "Who is this guy? Another muscle-bound guy trying to make a name in Hollywood." Stallone didn't take Arnold seriously as a competitor at all. However, when the awards were announced, Rocky didn't win a single award. Meanwhile, Arnold won, actually taking home the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year. Stallone was stunned. According to him, Arnold spent the entire night mocking him as Rocky was overlooked, and that struck a nerve with Stallone. Finally, his anger boiled over and Stallone threw a massive bouquet of flowers at Arnold's head. That moment marked the beginning of one of the most petty yet fascinating rivalries in Hollywood, a battle that would last for 15 years. It was a mix of egos, an arms race, and even comedy all blending together. The 1980s became a personal battleground for both of them. At first, Stallone had the upper hand. He had Rocky II, Third Four, and later First Blood, turning John Rambo into a cultural icon. By that point, Stallone was nearly the king of the action genre. But Arnold wasn't just going to stand by and let Sly take all the glory. He saw Stallone getting torn apart on screen and thought, "Wait a minute, he's in my lane. I'm the muscle guy, I'm the bodybuilder, it's time for me to flip the switch." And so Arnold unleashed Conan, the Barbarian, followed by the Terminator Predator, and it all felt like it was designed to outdo everything Stallone had done. Their competition became so intense that people in the industry started whispering about them trying to sabotage each other's films. Stallone would show up with bigger guns and Rambo Arnold would come up with something even more ridiculous. Arnold tore a muscle in Conan. Stallone added 10 more abs for Rocky IV. They both started escalating to the point of absurdity, but it was the kind of absurdity that audiences loved. And they weren't shy about publicly criticizing each other. Arnold had a scene in Twins where he walked past a Rambo poster and mocked it. Stallone, of course, didn't sit quietly. In Tango and Cash, he had his character punch a prisoner who looked like Arnold not just once, but twice. The battle between them wasn't just playing out on screen, but also spilled over into the smallest details of every scene, making fans unable to look away from this rivalry. First, Stallone knocked out that character, then hit him so hard that no one could recognize him. Subtle, right? But the greatest trolling moment of all time that came later, and it was truly brilliant. A terrible script for the comedy Stop or My Mom Will Shoot started circulating. Arnold read it and immediately realized it was a disaster. But instead of walking away, he made the ultimate move. Arnold pretended he wanted that role. The news got to Stallone, who was still trying to one-up Arnold, and he rushed to grab the part. Stallone used every trick in the book to secure a role in that awful movie. Meanwhile, Arnold sat back observing and laughing at the chaos unfolding. Stallone landed the role, made the movie, and the result was an absolute disaster. Critics tore it apart. Fans hated it. The film bombed horribly at the box office, and the reviews criticized Stallone, saying he tried and failed at copying Arnold's success in comedy, a painful blow. It was one of the lowest points in Stallone's career. As for Arnold, he couldn't stop laughing. However, karma doesn't play favorites. Not long after Arnold starred in Junior, a film where he actually gets pregnant, and that film flopped terribly, perhaps even worse than Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Suddenly, both action giants were suffering from failures in comedy films, and their rivalry no longer felt like a battle, but more like two giants punching each other in the face. In the end, their rivalry came to an end. It took both of them some time to recover, regain their momentum, and find their footing again. And surprisingly, many years later, they actually became friends. They starred in a few movies together, poking fun at their old feud and moving past it. It turns out it's hard to hold on to anger forever, even if you once threw flowers at someone's head on national television. Whether it's Rocky, Terminator, Rambo, or Predator, those classic films may not have existed the way we know them without the constant competition between these two. If you think competition can help us grow and improve, leave a 1. If you think sometimes rivalry just makes things more tense, comment 0. Don't forget to enjoy this video and support us by hitting the subscribe button. See you in the next video.